body lay in the park with multiple fatal stab wounds. All evidence pointed to a young girl, making her the immediate prime suspect. However, as the truth gradually unfolded, the police realized the killer wasn't the biggest mystery. More terrifying was what a seemingly perfect family had done to conceal the truth behind the death. 19-year-old Stella was attending a psychological counseling session. She kept scratching her arm. Her thoughts drifted back 4 years. Back then, Stella was a member of her school's handball team. She was immediately attracted to Robin, the coach's assistant. She couldn't restrain herself and confessed her feelings to him. He took her to a small house in the mountains. Despite her repeated refusals, it was all in vain. Only when the homeowner heard the noise and came inside did Robin suddenly stop. Stella's father, Adam, quickly arrived to take her home. She said she had been forced. Everything was Robin's doing. Adam immediately called his wife, Ulrika. They then took Stella to the hospital for a thorough examination. However, there were no obvious injuries, so they couldn't charge her with rape. Stella repeatedly assured Ulrika that she only wanted to kiss Robin. What happened afterward wasn't consensual. She just felt stiff and didn't know how to push him away. Adam wanted to report it to the police. Ulrika, being a lawyer, understood the procedure. The police would undoubtedly relentlessly question Stella about the details. She had just suffered trauma, and being forced to relive everything would only cause her further harm. Worse still, she had no evidence to prove she was raped. The hospital results also didn't prove any rape. Even if the prosecutor's office accepted the case, the chances of winning were slim. It could even tarnish Stella's reputation as a promiscuous woman. Adam was very disheartened after hearing this. Following this advice, he decided not to report it to the police, hoping time would heal the wounds. But Stella overheard her parents' conversation. She locked herself in her room and silently wept. 4 years had passed, and their family still maintained a facade of harmony, but inside, it was on the verge of breaking apart. Today was Stella's 19th birthday. Adam had given her a brand new electric car, but she had made it clear several times 6 months ago that what she wanted was to travel. She was about to argue back when Ulrika interrupted her. She was forced to remain silent and endure. Her promised trip with her best friend, Amina, was thus shattered. Although Amina suggested she could sell the car for money, only Stella understood that what mattered wasn't the money, but the feeling of her parents' lack of concern for her 4 years ago. To improve Stella's mood, Amina took her to a bar to meet some old classmates. Since the incident with Robin 4 years ago, Stella had dropped out of school and taken on a part-time job. Watching her friends talk about university, she couldn't fit in. The hustle and bustle of the bar only made her feel more alone, so she went out to steal. A man approached her. Without thinking, she followed him. This man, named Chris, seemed very approachable. He took her to an art exhibition in Copenhagen. She pretended to be knowledgeable about art, but in reality, she knew nothing. Afterwards, they both attended a party. He treated her with great respect. Stella had a wonderful birthday this year. She thought this was the freedom she had always dreamed of, but things quickly spiraled out of control. One night, after Adam had finished preparing dinner, he learned that Stella hadn't come home. Ulrika had said she had to work overtime and left immediately, but her work ID card was on the table. This proved she was lying. He soon realized that both of them had someone else in their hearts. He turned a blind eye, all to save his family from falling apart. It was nighttime, but Stella still hadn't returned. She didn't even answer Adam's calls. From 11 p.m. to around 12:30 a.m., he sent her numerous messages, but received no response. At 1:54 a.m., he was awakened by a noise. Ulrika had returned home and was sleeping soundly beside him. He followed the sound to the basement and found Stella secretly showering there. Not only was she acting strangely, but her clothes were stained with blood. The bathroom had been cleaned, and no suspicious traces were found. But a sense of unease welled up inside him. The next morning, Stella went to work. Ulrika, as usual, found an excuse to refuse Adam's advances. On the surface, everything seemed normal, but as he drove past the park, he saw many police cars, and the scene was cordoned off. Police, forensic experts, and civilians were gathered around. Just by looking, it was clear a murder had just occurred. With the conscience of a pastor, Adam approached and asked a few questions, but he didn't pay much attention. Then he continued on to work at the church. Around 4 p.m., Ulrika received a call from her lover, Mikhail, saying that Stella had been detained on suspicion of murder. The victim was a 32-year-old man named Chris. Ulrika immediately went to Stella's room and found a blood-stained bag of clothes under the bed. She stuffed the bag into her handbag and calmly left the house. At this time, the police arrived to search her house. She pretended not to know anything and handed over the house keys. Then she clutched the bag tightly, and got into the police car to go to the station. Adam was in the middle of a baptism ceremony, completely unaware. Stella, meanwhile, was dressed in prison clothes and detained in a cell. When questioned by the police, Ulrika said that she had gone out on a date the night before and then gone home to sleep. She didn't know what time Stella had returned home. When the police asked what Stella was wearing that night, Ulrika nervously clutched her handbag. The clothes Stella had taken off were stored inside, but she still calmly replied that she didn't know. The current situation was very unfavorable for Stella. The police had witnesses who saw her at the scene around 1 a.m. They also heard screaming nearby. Mikhail said he would arrange for Stella's treatment. To avoid any misunderstandings, he repeatedly emphasized that without a lawyer present, Stella had the right not to disclose anything to the police. Not long after, Adam received the news. He rushed to the scene. Ulrika recounted the events, and then she hurried to the nursing home. She went near the dementia ward. Then she hid the blood-stained clothes in a closet and carefully locked it. She and her husband had never discussed this beforehand, but their thoughts coincided strangely. Adam had deleted the message he sent Stella at 12:30 a.m. Although he clearly remembered being woken up at 1:54 a.m., he lied, saying he saw Stella come home at 11:55 a.m. He even claimed they had greeted each other. After leaving the police station, he went to the park where the murder occurred. Chris's friends and family were also there to pay their respects. Whether out of professional instinct or guilt, Adam silently bowed his head and prayed for him. A passerby struck up a conversation with Adam. It turned out this person was the only witness to the case. Although he hadn't witnessed the murder firsthand, he had seen a blonde girl with a tattoo on her arm nearby before the crime. These characteristics matched Stella perfectly. At this moment, she recalled how she had met Chris. That night, after saying goodbye, Chris had contacted Stella through social media. His way of speaking was very reserved. She had never been in love before. She couldn't resist the youthful infatuation. Every day she would talk to Chris on the phone. Even though she had plans to go to a party with Amina, she always canceled to talk to Chris. It wasn't until he asked her out that she carefully applied makeup and tried on several outfits in front of the mirror. Because he was 15 years older than her, she intentionally wore makeup to look more mature. Still feeling insecure because of the attack she suffered 4 years earlier, she carried anti-assault spray. Chris came from a good family and was highly educated, but he never looked down on Stella. He even complimented her, saying she was an interesting girl. A few words of praise from him made her feel elated. She couldn't resist and proactively tried to get closer to him, but he refused, saying that he had just been hurt by his ex-girlfriend and wanted to take things slowly. At that time, she didn't realize that every word he said was a trap. Despite her parents' attempts to dissuade her, they only received the same result. At the scene, footprints matching Stella's shoes were found. Although this style of shoe was quite popular among young people, witnesses also confirmed seeing Stella near Chris's house that night. Most importantly, the body bore traces of pepper spray, the same type Stella had in her bag. Therefore, she was identified as the primary suspect. Mikhail suggested finding a replacement suspect so Stella could be released, as Chris wasn't a good person. His ex-girlfriend Linda had repeatedly accused him of threats and assault. Adam and Ulrika returned home to find their room ransacked by the police. He silently clutched his daughter's favorite toy. He made a decision. He changed into his pastor's attire and went to Linda's house, pretending to be a pastor assigned by the community to provide spiritual support. She resented Chris, calling him a liar. She accused him of feigning innocence to deceive everyone. While they were together, he not only deceived her, but also seduced her best friend, causing her to lose her unborn child. Adam suspected Chris used similar tactics against Stella. Adam's persistent questioning gradually aroused Linda's suspicion about his true identity and motives. She didn't want to say anything more. Reluctantly, he left. But right outside the door, he saw a pair of shoes identical to Stella's. Could this be the perfect replacement suspect? He immediately went to the police station to report Linda's shoes. However, a pair of shoes couldn't erase suspicion against Stella. The police found hundreds of messages between her and Chris. Most of them were expressions of affection. This proved their relationship was very close. Adam left disappointed. Meanwhile, the case was having an increasingly significant impact on their entire family. Adam had once been the most respected figure in the church, but after this case, people no longer trusted him. They canceled all appointments to ensure the church's continued operation. The manager also decided to put him on temporary leave. Stella was transferred to the suspect's cell. Looking at the cold room, she remembered the past. Ever since she met Chris, she had always thought about him. She had seen on social media that Chris's ex-girlfriend wore white shoes to win him over. She bought an identical pair, even though it wasn't her style. Later, she secretly went to Chris's hometown to find him. During dinner, they talked openly. He told her that his ex-girlfriend, Linda, was extremely controlling. She often used used their child to blackmail him, and he broke up with her because he couldn't bear it anymore. Stella didn't suspect anything. Instead, she developed even stronger feelings for him. That night, she overcame her 10-year trauma and gave herself to him. Linda sought out Stella. She knew exactly how Chris had badmouthed her. Linda didn't mind, and even reminded Stella that there were many pills in Chris's drawer. She said that if Stella found them, she would understand everything. That night, Stella went to Chris's house, and they were as intimate as before. She had intended to ignore Linda's words. But while they were making love, Chris unexpectedly took out his camera and suggested capturing their sweet moment. She didn't think much of the consequences and didn't refuse. The next morning, when she woke up, he was gone. Remembering Linda's words, she opened the drawer in her room to search. Sure enough, she found a lot of illegal drugs. Before she could examine them closely, she heard the door open. She closed the drawer, pretending nothing had happened. The prison guard's arrival interrupted Stella's thoughts. The police assigned a psychologist to her. Although this person seemed friendly and said they wouldn't force her to confess to the crime, she remained wary. Her words were sarcastic and constantly insulting, causing the therapy session to fail. Public opinion on social media erupted fiercely. Everyone participating in the discussion cursed Stella. Adam watched, heartbroken. He was even more saddened to see his wife remain calm, as if nothing had happened. Ulrika was a seasoned lawyer. Especially in this situation, she couldn't let her emotions get the better of her. She sought out Amina to learn more about Chris, but Amina said she had only met him a few times. They weren't close. She only knew that he and Stella knew each other. On the night of the crime, Amina had arranged to have dinner with Stella. However, due to a headache, she texted Stella and left early. Later, Ulrika contacted Mikhail and learned that the police were still in the preliminary stages of the investigation. They had obtained partial DNA results, which were stored in the prosecutor's office. Ulrika contacted her friend who worked at the prosecutor's office. She made an excuse to visit and met with this friend. When she heard that the prosecutor in charge of Chris's case wasn't in the office, she pretended to say a few words, then sneaked into the office to search for case-related documents and photographed everything. Afterwards, she rearranged the items in the room and left as if nothing had happened. Back in her car, Ulrika opened the documents and discovered that Amina had been to Chris's house. Yet, she had previously said they weren't close. Was she lying? Ulrika sought out Amina, hoping she would tell the truth, but she hesitated, ultimately choosing to remain silent. Ulrika left. Amina and Stella had been close friends for many years, and their families frequently visited each other. Ulrika used the excuse of a gathering to suggest that the two families have dinner together that evening. At this moment, Ulrika saw Robin, the man who had assaulted Stella 4 years prior. Ulrika suddenly remembered Stella saying that her body had become stiff and uncontrollable, causing her to forget to push the other person away. Could this time also be Chris's doing, leading to this outcome? That night, Ulrika secretly entered Amina's room to search for evidence. In the trash can was a photo of Chris, Stella, and Amina together. This proved that Amina and Chris were definitely not strangers. Ulrika was about to open Amina's computer when her husband and Amina's father arrived. Amina's father understood Ulrika's intention to shift suspicion to someone else to clear Stella's name. He became furious and kicked them out of the house. The failed plan left Ulrika completely devastated. The first thing she did upon returning home was drink excessively. Adam couldn't understand her actions, but he didn't want to say anything. The next morning, Ulrika rushed to teach at the law school. As usual, she asked questions and waited for the students' answers. But recently, a murder case had caused a stir, and the students were talking about her. They even filmed her with their phones. Gradually, Ulrika felt dizzy. She couldn't hear what the students were saying clearly. Then she started gasping for breath. As soon as she stepped out of the classroom, she collapsed to the ground and fainted. When she woke up, she found herself in the hospital. The long period of continuous work had caused her to develop a panic disorder. She was no longer fit to return to work. In that moment of fainting, she thought clearly about many things. Finally, Ulrika realized that the reason Stella had become the way she was because years ago, when Stella was abused, Ulrika, as a mother, had been too calculating and hadn't thought about seeking justice for her daughter. This caused Stella to close herself off and gradually led to the breakdown of the family. During her second counseling session, Stella also told the doctor that she didn't know why she was born. Her father was a pastor, her mother a lawyer. Both were outstanding professionals. She, however, dropped out of school and worked at a cafe. Her mother once complained to a friend that they were left with only one daughter who hadn't even graduated from high school. Adam Adam sometimes tacitly accepted Ulrika's attitude. Therefore, Stella felt that perhaps she was never the person they truly loved. When the doctor asked why she was in this state, she thought back to what had happened 4 years ago, but she didn't say a word. Mikhail visited Ulrika at the hospital. Seeing her so frail, he kissed her forehead tenderly. Adam witnessed everything. Ulrika panicked, pulled out the IV drip, and hurried after him. He hid in his car and once again saw them leave the hospital together. The truth is often cruel. When faced with it, Adam could no longer pretend not to see. Ulrika returned home, her room filled with regret. She called Adam, but no one answered. Then there was a knock on the door. It was Amina. After much thought, she decided to tell him everything that had happened that night. According to her account, Ulrika drove to the back gate of the park and found the blood-stained knife in the bushes. She used visiting her father as an excuse to go to the nursing home. She took the blood-stained clothes she had hidden in the closet and put them in her bag. Then she carried the tray of food out of her father's room. She pretended to wash dishes, but in reality, she cleaned the bloodstains off the knife and hid it in the nursing home's kitchen cupboard. Finally, she went outside and burned all the clothes. When she returned home, Adam was packing his things, preparing to leave. Ulrika apologized for her betrayal, but she didn't receive forgiveness. He blamed her for neglecting the family, for having an affair while their daughter was in trouble. He also accused her of other bad habits like alcoholism, a quick temper, and frequently leaving home overnight. She in turn said Adam always blamed others. Two people who once loved each other deeply are now arguing fiercely. They seem to realize that since the events of 4 years ago, their family has begun to crumble. It all stems from their betrayal of Stella. Adam drives away from home, his mind filled with images of Stella happy when their family was still together. He feels he needs to do something, so he goes to find Robin, the one who hurt Stella. Each punch he throws is with all his might, as if he wants to kill Robin. But at the last moment, Adam stops, because he understands that even if Robin dies, it can't heal his daughter's wounds. Fortunately, because Robin fears the case from 4 years ago being reopened, he doesn't intend to sue Adam. The matter is temporarily closed. Stella, who has been under pressure for so long, receives her 3rd counseling session. This time she no longer resists as before. She frankly says that she understands that even if she sues, she can't win the case from 4 years ago. She doesn't blame her family. She only blames herself for not pushing Robin away. After the incident, she didn't dare stand up and report him. The doctor told her that her body stiffening, when threatened, was a very natural reaction. It was a survival instinct, but that didn't mean the other party had the right to continue assaulting her. She hadn't done anything wrong. Hearing this, she burst into tears. After 4 years, she finally heard these words. It was more important than being exonerated. Back in her cell, memories pulled her back to the past. Since meeting Chris, the only thing she focused on each day was talking to him. She rarely contacted Amina. Even when they met, she only talked about Chris. Seeing Stella so engrossed in love, Amina began to feel uneasy. She gradually noticed something strange about Chris. To mend their friendship, Stella refused Chris's date. Then she invited Amina to dinner at a restaurant. She dressed particularly nicely. When she went downstairs, she saw her mother still working and not even glancing at her. The feeling of being ignored was unpleasant, but she didn't want to embarrass herself further. She set off for the meeting. Shortly after arriving at the bar, Stella saw Chris and another woman entering the pub across the street. She went over to see and realized it was Chris's friend, but he refused to leave and insisted on keeping Amina there. Amina noticed how intimate Stella and Chris were. Thinking about having to go to work the next day, Stella and Amina prepared to leave. Before they got into the car, Amina realized she had left her bag at the pub, but Stella had already left. Amina went back to get it. Late at night, Stella received a call from Amina, saying that after she returned to the pub, Chris had offered to drive her home. But because she was afraid Stella would misunderstand, she had specifically called to let her know beforehand. The next day, Stella didn't go to work but went to Chris's house very early. Chris was disheveled. As soon as he saw Stella, he panicked and chased her away. Stella saw that Amina seemed to be in the room. When she called, she learned that Amina was at the library reading. It turned out to be a misunderstanding. But why wouldn't Chris let Stella into the house? Was there something hidden inside? Stella's parents were preparing to go away, leaving her alone at home. Chris suddenly came to her house, saying he wanted to apologize for kicking her out that morning. After getting into her house, he went around looking everywhere. He said he wanted to learn about her daily life. He even suggested going into Adam and Ulrika's bedroom, to get a feel for things. This made Stella uncomfortable. Watching Chris leave, she suddenly had a feeling she should stay away from him. That night, Linda came to see Stella and asked if she had checked Chris's drawers. The drugs inside were prepared by him for his purposes. Just then, Chris called. Stella was about to hang up when he reminded her that last time, because she didn't answer the phone, he had dragged her to the sofa and given her a good scolding. It turned out Chris was extremely controlling and violent. His gentle exterior was just a mask. Stella still doubted Linda's words, but from then on, she didn't dare answer Chris's calls anymore. She planned to meet Amina to talk, but Amina was busy studying for exams, so they postponed their meeting until the following evening. Chris kept calling Stella. She was extremely panicked. She wanted to tell her parents for help, but just as she was about to speak, her mother interrupted her. Her mother told her to get some wine from the refrigerator. When she returned, Stella no longer wanted to talk. Perhaps she also sensed that her thoughts carried no weight in this house. She always avoided Chris's harassment, but the more she avoided him, the more he clung to her. He even came to her house. Because he knew all the information, she was forced to pretend to be happy and accept his invitation. He took her to a secluded, empty plot of land. He dreamed of building a large house there, and then he would take her to live with him. He talked about everything in their lives, but he never asked if she agreed. When he learned that she would be meeting Amina after work instead of him, his expression changed. His gentle demeanor turned cold. He drove her back to the city center. After work, Stella immediately went to the restaurant where she had arranged to meet Amina, but she searched everywhere and couldn't find her friend. Soon after, Stella received a text message from Amina saying she had a headache and was going home early. However, Stella looked closely at the message and saw many spelling errors. It didn't sound like Amina's usual way of speaking. Stella's phone had run out of battery and shut off, so she had to borrow a friend's phone nearby. The other person treated her with contempt and refused to lend it. She had to yell at them to get the phone back. Coincidentally, she overheard someone saying they had just seen Chris at a bar. Stella's unease intensified. She worried something had happened to Amina. She rushed to Chris's house and found the lights still on in his room. But even though she knocked for a long time, no one answered. Thinking about this made her breathless. All the memories related to Chris kept repeating in her head until the bloody scene from that night completely shattered her thoughts. She didn't dare remember anymore. All she could do was cry out as she knocked on her own door. Meanwhile, Ulrika found Mikhail and demanded that he consider Amina a key witness. Her conflicted and panicked expression made him feel something was wrong, but he didn't ask many questions. To maintain a peaceful family life, Ulrika made a big decision to cut ties with Mikhail. Chris's trial quickly began. Stella was escorted to court. Mikhail reminded her to speak as little as possible. If she spoke too much, she might make mistakes. In court, at the prosecutor's request, Stella simply described her day's events. In the morning, she went to work, and after work, she intended to go to the restaurant to meet Amina. But Amina left early and didn't reply to her messages, so she ended up going to Chris's house. No one opened the door, so she left. On her way home, she took a shortcut, skipping the park. The prosecutor exposed her lie. Footprints matching hers were found at the scene. Next, the prosecution questioned whether she loved Chris and was worried about his relationship with Amina, as she had texted Amina that evening asking if she was with Chris. The prosecutor speculated that she was consumed by jealousy and went to Chris's house to vent her anger. Another witness, a friend of Stella's, testified that Stella was very agitated, angry, and aggressive that night. The owner of the coffee shop where Stella worked confirmed that she always carried pepper spray. Police found dirt on the soles of her shoes that matched the dirt at the crime scene. The witness also stated that he had seen Stella walking through the park and heard shouting after 1 a.m. All the evidence was against Stella. Adam was also called to testify. He assured them, in his capacity as a pastor, that he wouldn't lie, but he still claimed that at 11:55 p.m. he heard noises in the basement and knew Stella had returned home. The prosecution recovered the deleted messages Adam had sent and asked why he was still texting her at 12:23 p.m. If Stella had been home since 11:55 p.m., someone else might have panicked, but he tried to appear calm, saying that a slow internet connection was normal for messages to be sent late. However, the prosecution pointed out that he had tried to frame Linda to replace the suspect. There was a possibility of lying. Wearing blue jeans and a gray shirt, the police searched extensively but couldn't find them. It's highly likely Adam disposed of those items, but in reality, he was completely unaware of this. After the break, Stella suddenly realized that the evidence under her bed couldn't have just disappeared. Only her mother could have done this. Adam realized this too. His prejudice against his wife gradually began to fade. Their hands clasped together again. At the second court hearing, Mikhail summoned the final witness, Amina. Amina described Stella as brave and kind, always ready to stand up for her friends. She had a stable personality and was definitely not the type to attack others. When the prosecutor questioned her about what happened that night, the memories Amina had been avoiding finally flooded back. Initially, she was waiting for Stella in the restaurant when Chris suddenly approached her, saying that he had taken a liking to her the first time they met. She wasn't easily fooled, so she quickly replied and went elsewhere. But Chris then offered him a drink and apologized. Seeing that he seemed decent, she didn't suspect anything and drank the entire glass. Little did she know that the pills in Chris's cabinet were meant for such situations. Amina felt dizzy. She staggered out of the restaurant. Chris, meanwhile, had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He put her in the car. He even used Amina's phone to send a message to Stella. Amina deliberately kept Stella's subsequent visit to Chris's house a secret. She only said that after waking up at Chris's house, she immediately left. When the prosecutor asked why she hadn't mentioned it before, she explained that after the Robin incident 4 years ago, everyone thought the perpetrator would be acquitted, while the victim had to endure all the social pressure. If that were the case, it was better not to say anything. This clue immediately caused panic among the prosecution. In fact, they possessed a lot of evidence unfavorable to Stella. But because there was a third person at the scene, all the previous evidence was no longer valid. Furthermore, the prosecution had no other evidence that could prove Stella was the culprit. The case's turnaround was largely thanks to Ulrika. She knew very well that if the police had known earlier that there was a second suspect at the scene, they would have fully assisted in arresting both girls. Therefore, she chose to wait until the trial to launch a surprise attack, preventing the police from reinvestigating and verifying the real culprit. At the third trial, the prosecution remained adamant about accusing Stella of murder, and Amina volunteered to testify. However, Mikhail pointed out that the murder weapon had not yet been found. The current evidence only proved Stella had been near the scene, not that she had committed the murder. The jury reached a unanimous verdict. In the Chris murder case, Stella was acquitted and released. She also clearly felt her parents' efforts for her, the family, on the verge of breaking apart, could finally be mended. After Stella was exonerated, she went to Chris's hometown. In the church, she lit a candle and silently repented. That night, because Chris refused to open the door, she had to use an emergency ladder to climb to the rooftop. She carefully sneaked into Chris's room and witnessed a suffocating scene. Amina, unconscious, was struggling. Chris then brandished a knife, threatening her. To protect her best friend, Stella mustered up the courage to use pepper spray to attack Chris. The two girls ran away together. Chris, enraged, chased after them. When he reached the park, he suddenly tripped and fell. Seeing the knife fall to the ground, Stella understood that a scumbag like him, once he clung to her, wouldn't easily let go. Therefore, in a fit of rage, she finished him off. Afterwards, Amina picked up the knife. The two girls left together. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, and see you again.